How do you turn off that reactive switch in you? How do you stop reacting? How do you make yourself stop shouting and yelling? And how do you unravel that yelling? And how do you actually unwrap it? Yeah, how do you know what is the root of that yelling? Where is that yelling coming from? Why do we yell? Why do we get into that rage? It's when we feel that we've got something to say and nobody is listening, when we feel like our boundaries have been crossed, when we feel that there's a lack of respect, when we feel that there is unfairness. But why the yelling, and why can't it be addressed in another way? The yelling comes in when we are at our tether's end. The yelling comes in when we are chronically stressed. The yelling comes in when the self-care has gone down and we are unable to deal with the situation rationally or in a way that's going to lengthen the gap between the trigger, the stressor, and what your reaction is going to be. It's really hard to get out of a situation like that. So the best response when you don't have one is to walk away or to ask for some more time. And when you do shout, there will be guilt or there will be all these other extra feelings that come up which might cloud exactly what has happened there. So it depends on the dynamics of what took place. Go back to what put you in that position and why you felt that you had to raise your voice. And it's not a calculated reaction. These are reactions that happen, a freeze and flight, fight, stress response that you lose control of. And why do we lose control? We lose control when our amygdala is so sensitive and we are hypersensitive at that moment. And our hypersensitivity comes in when we really at that point are already very, very stretched. This is where we need to know that we can be that and we can be whatever it is that we are at any given moment with those figures of stability in our life. We need that figure of stability, and that could be you. It could be an enlightened witness such as your therapist. It could be your mother, your father, your family, or your relative. Anybody, a friend that is able to accept all of that. What happens when we don't have that? What happens when you don't have the confidence that I will be accepted just as I am and that there will be a buffer? The root of that feeling of not having that kind of total acceptance or total unconditional love for you is when in your infancy or in your childhood, from the ages of 0 to 21, you were at the receiving end of conditional love or conditional caregiving, conditional praise, conditional recognition of your efforts, or a conditional acceptance of you. Unfortunately, when we don't receive that kind of total, absolute acceptance and recognition and validation and what have you, it then stifles the growth of this individual. So rather than growing secure and normally, we then fear and we're not trusting. We're not trusting. And when you are healing all of these things, be easy on yourself as well. Don't go too hard, because that inner critic comes back up. That feeling of guilt comes back up. So that you might even notice that when you have lost your temper, when you've lost your cool, you start to feel this familiar hole in you again, this familiar feeling of sadness and heaviness that you really can't lift and you can't point. That is abandonment depression. Abandonment depression is a very subtle phenomena, and it can happen to anyone, and people suffer from this without even knowing. People who have been emotionally abandoned by their parents or by their caregivers at a time when they were vulnerable as children, these grow up into adults who will have this kind of a hole in them because you've been abandoned. But you don't know. We will be talking about this mother wound in depth, or a kind of wound that we have carried with us for generations, where we don't really talk about it because it's not tangible. It's not something that you can really say, well, this is what they did. It isn't. It's a kind of silent wound that's inside of us that we carry for generations and generations, that gets then fed into our children, but it's something that we need to stop. So be easy on yourself. Give yourself that figure of full acceptance. Don't look for it on the outside of you, because when that's not there, you as the adult self have got to give yourself that total acceptance in whichever way you are, That'll help you heal. That'll help you have that, that missing parent, or that missing total acceptance, which we then seek out in a God, or we seek out in this being that we don't know, this amazing universe that accepts us and loves us unconditionally, or even angels. Whatever it is, get to the root of it and just see that you really hold the key to heal yourself if you can forgive those little transgressions or little diversions along the path of your healing. Because if you're absolutely committed to this process, you will make it. You've already made it. Look how far you've come, haven't you?